Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. And this is the second video in a series of listening to younger generations. And the theme today is I want to talk about our questions and answers that we seem not to be very clear about. We are projecting onto our younger generations a lot of expectations and a lot of thought that doesn't seem to them to have much rationality or has any kind of source that makes sense to them. And that's why I'm using this term, answers to questions never asked, because they're told all the stuff that they're supposed to believe and do, but they never have been told why. And because I don't think even my generation knows why anymore. We just know that this is what we've always done, and we're not going to change. We don't want to change because we have become very comfortable with the way things are. And so we don't want change, and therefore we're not asking the questions which would cause change to happen. And this is a challenge that I think the modern world has brought to us, because now we have people who are living 10, 20, 30 years past retirement. And so they're not in a position where their work is going to cause the development of communities or whatever it may be. And so they're in a retirement phase where they are, in a sense, sitting back and watching, even if they're active, but they're sitting back and watching how the rest of the world is unfolding. And many cases, and I hear this regularly, that they're not happy with that. They don't like the way things are. But they also feel at the same time, that they have grown past their time where they were to be leaders. And so there is this sense of isolation or alienation by my generation. And so they want to hang on to that which they feel like they have as their strength, which is their mindset, their wealth, the things that they learned how to do, the ways of doing things, the ways a business should operate, the ways the schools should operate, and their attitudes, our attitudes, my generation's attitudes, are that change is not necessary. Or if the change is necessary, it is to change it back the way it was. And that's not possible. The conditions that brought about the world that my generation grew up in are no longer there, because it's to be understood that as a baby boomer, we were the generation that came after the greatest generation. We're the children of the greatest generation. We're the children of those who went through the Great Depression. We're the children of those who fought the Second World War. And we had it really easy compared to our parents, compared to our grandparents, and probably every generation ever until we came along. The economic boom in the 1950s and 60s changed the world. Now, there's a lot of complications that have come with that, but that's not the same thing as recognizing that I'm the beneficiary of a period of growth in the world, economically, socially, and in every way, that almost does not have an explanation that can be identified in the particulars of an individual's life. So when we say this is the way it should be, and we're projecting that onto younger people, say in their 20s, they don't understand why we're saying that, because they're not seeing that we're offering to them a reason for something. We're only offering to them a type of criticism of the way things are. And they say, well, they just want it to be different and like it used to be. But they don't see that as something of value, because we're not giving them any sense of why things are the way they are or why they changed. And I don't think my generation even understands how things have changed. I'm almost certain of that. And so my generation has questions that they won't ask, and younger generations have questions that they don't even know that they need to ask because they don't know what the questions are. All they know is that we have through our education system, through our media, through social media, through our parent ways we parent and grandparent, we have thrust upon them a set of expectations and a set of ways of thinking about the world which do not necessarily make sense to them. So why should they do it? Why should they take on work? Why should they work hard? Why should they become upwardly mobile? Why should they do any of this? You see, that was what my generation saw as the opportunity. We could be upwardly mobile. We could move out of a lower class or a blue collar economic level and become middle class or upper middle class or even extraordinarily wealthy. That was possible for about 30 years there, 40 years. It's much more difficult today. Why it's more difficult is a whole different conversation to be had that is not actually relevant to what I'm talking about here. Because what we need to do is ask the question, how did we get to where we are? Then have that conversation with younger people and say, this is what we did. This is how we did it. But we also now see that the conditions that made it easy for that to happen are no longer there. For example, I was a student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. My first semester's tuition, this is in the fall of 1971, was $125. Now, think about that. What is it that's cost? What does it cost to go to a university today? Tens of thousands of dollars every year. Now, that's a change which we've accepted because it seems like that's the thing we must accept. How did that happen? Why did it happen that college education became so expensive? And I'm not asking you to answer that question. To me, I think you have to ask that question as to how does that affect my children and my grandchildren and my great grandchildren, if you're my age? Why is it that we have allowed that kind of development of the cost of everything in society to happen? Because what it has done is placed younger generations in jeopardy. It means maybe they'll never own a house. And when a global leader says you will not own anything but be happy, that is not an answer that younger people and younger adults can accept because it doesn't make sense when someone who is extraordinarily wealthy tells them, well, you will never own anything because I already own it. I'm not saying that we should be um, jealous or desirous of someone else's wealth. That is not what I'm saying because I don't think that's the answer either. I think what we are dealing with is we don't know, as older people, we do not know why we're in the position we're in. And we are just as subject to being manipulated by the culture of simulation as younger people are. Because we're scrolling through the news, we have our own news sources, and we already believe that what we believe, and we believe what we believe is true, whether it is or not. And we have no sense that we are being manipulated. And therefore, we think we already know what the way things should be, and so we're projecting that back onto young people. What we need to be doing with young people is having the conversation about what is important. What is important to you? What do you need from us? How can we help you change the world? What I find in talking with people with young people is that they're very open to having a conversation when they're treated with respect. I think this is a major issue here because I don't think they see older people as having respect towards them. I treat them with respect because I care about them. And I've always cared. I've worked with this age group, different generations of this age group, since I was in college. I've worked with high school kids and college kids up until about 20 years ago. And now I seek out these people, not in an occupational sense, but in a social sense. So I'm going to go if I see someone over there sitting at a table in the coffee shop. I'm going to go introduce myself and say hi. I did that the other day, back in December. Woman sitting next to me and I said, "Hi, what are you studying?" And she says, "Well, I'm in my first year of law school. I'm getting ready for my exams." I said, how did you come to want to be in law, to do law?" And she told me her story. And it was interesting, to hear how they are thinking through their lives and coming to decisions about what they're going to do is fascinating. And it's more interesting than I find in almost any conversation I have. I told her about my book, and I told her I'm titled it Answers to Questions Never Asked. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, well, that's exactly the way it is." I said, "What do you mean by that?" And she described what she saw. We have a breakdown in communication. We have a breakdown in understanding, and we are not unified as a culture between the generations because we're not talking about the same questions. We're not even asking the questions, and we need to be asking the right questions, and we need to be seeking answers together, not seeking answers that we tell younger people this is the way it should be. No, we're seeking answers that help them say this is how we can proceed forward to create a better world. This is where I believe our listening to younger generations will bring about a real benefit to the world at large. And if you don't have a relationship with someone young, then I would suggest you go to some coffee shop near a university and sit there for an hour every day for a week, or every day during the week for a month, and begin to identify people that you would like to have a conversation with. Don't treat this as some project. No, go look for people that look interesting enough. I want to have a conversation with them. And so you go over and say, "Hi, I'm Ed. Would you mind if I ask you some questions? I'm curious about who you are and what you're doing here. What is it that what you're reading? What are you reading?" And you'll find that they're reading stuff that you have no clue as to what this is about. Doesn't matter. It's because that's what they're reading and it matters to them. And if you can understand why it matters to them, then you can express your sense of appreciation and gratitude and honor towards them. I think this is a critical need for us in our society today. So let me suggest that you do two things. The first is start writing down the questions that matter to you. Write down the questions that you don't have answers to and that you're not having the conversation with anybody about. Because I know you have questions. And in particular, the questions that if you were to say them publicly, you would be treated poorly because you have defied the dominant narrative of your circle of relationships. And all that, it all depends on where you get your news sources. All depends on what you're watching on TV, what you're looking at on social media. I mean, that's if you watch TV and you look at social media, you're being manipulated into thinking certain things. And so if you take that attitude, if you say, I am being manipulated, then you'll be able to begin to say, what is it that I don't believe in what I hear? And why is it I don't believe that? That's the question. Why do I not believe one politician or the other, or one business person or another, or one minister or another, or one entertainer or another? Why do I not believe what they're saying? Why do I disagree with them? And the question of why is not just that you don't. The question is, why? What is the source of my reason for not believing? And if you can come to that conclusion, then you have something to say to a young person to say, this is what I don't believe. What do you think? Because when you're asking those questions, you're doing exactly what they're doing, because they're processing all this as well. And if you're not hearing them process that, I mean, they get criticized for scrolling all the time. They get criticized for whatever, all kinds of things. Don't believe that scrolling is just not having any positive benefit. It is. They're seeing the world, and all they need is someone to say, what do you think about what you see? Do you agree with all that what you see? And if you could change what you see, how would you change that? So if you can have that kind of conversation, then you're asking the right questions, and you're going to find together a way to establish some kind of understanding where answers can come from the conversations you're having. That's what's important today. That we have the ability to be self-critical about all the messages that we receive, and then we are able to have conversations with people, our generation or younger generations, about what it is that we don't actually believe in what we're being told. And if you can do that, then you will find that you're now a person that they want to know, and they will respect you and not simply see you as someone who's throwing heavy expectations without any reason. So this is the world we live in. And if you need help in figuring out how to ask questions, I would suggest that you read my Substack, because I'm asking questions there all the time. And I'm digging deeper into this more and more. And if you have the capacity to be open to some new ideas and not simply looking for your own, looking for confirmation bias to your own prejudices, because you've already decided what you believe and what you think is true. But if you're willing to be open, then you're going to be challenged by what I write, because what I'm writing is really intended to help younger generations think through all the stuff that my generation and the older generations from them have thrust upon us in our world today. I know these are hard words, but this is how we get to where we need to be. So next week, I'm going to talk about families. That's all I'm going to say. We're going to talk about families. It's not a pretty picture, but we're going to talk about it. I thank you for watching, and please sign up, make a comment, send it to friends, so that you have the opportunity to have an influence, not because you're a number on a clicking something, but because you're actually trying to influence how people think, because you're asking questions and seeking to find new answers to the situations that we all, regardless of age, find ourselves in today. Thank you for watching the Eddie Network podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.